Hey guys, Woody the Unexceptional Gamer, and this is Tech Tuesday. It's not your normal Tech Tuesday. I recognize you guys are used to a certain production quality with the whiteboard and the drawings and maybe the children's toys too, but I'm not home right now. I'm at a friend's house, and I don't have my normal equipment and all that stuff set up, and I was sort of left with the choice of either not making a Tech Tuesday or doing one sort of vlog style. So I decided to sort of come through and make a Tech Tuesday even though it's vlog style. And here's what I'm going to talk about. There's a rumor, and I stress that this is just a rumor. It's not like hardcore fact. We don't know what the deal is. But the rumor is that Microsoft is talking about upping the specs on the Xbox. And they presented developers, people who have test systems, with a choice. They said, look, we're thinking about upping the RAM in the system from 8 gigabytes to 12 gigabytes. And we're thinking about increasing the clock speed on the GPU, the thing that does all the graphics processing. Pick one. And this wouldn't change the price point, but it would make them more competitive with the PS4 in terms of hardware capability. So I've been getting tweets, people have been calling out my name on Reddit, and they say, Woody, I want you to talk about these things. I want you to talk about what kind of impact the choices would have. What exactly happens to my games if we have more RAM? What exactly happens to my games if we have more clock speed? So here we go. In terms of RAM, eight. I'm sorry about the phone. 8 gigabytes of RAM is a good amount, right? We're talking about like a mid-range PC amount. But the thing about consoles is twofold. One, the RAM that supplies the GPU, the graphics card, and the RAM that supplies the CPU, the central processing unit, is from the same pool on both these consoles, by the way. But I'm really focused on the Xbox in this video. So when you hear 8 gigabytes, you think, oh yeah, that's as much as my PC has. We're cool. But if it's a gaming PC, you probably have a graphics card with 1 or 2 gigabytes of RAM. Whereas in this Xbox, it's shared. So we're really talking about you may have an 8 gigabyte PC system with a 2 gigabyte graphics card. That'd be like having a 6 with a 2 built in because they have to share. And by the way, fast forward a couple of years when, your PC is going to have even more RAM and your graphics card is going to have even more RAM, but your console is going to have the same amount. So it would be nice to have more just to keep pace with the PC guys so that as they write cross-platform games, they don't have a Herculean effort to either get it to run on the Xbox, which is one side, or like in the past couple of years, what we'd see is the PC version of the game would not be as good as it could have been because it was held back by, say, the 360 or the PS3. So more RAM in the Xbox One would be a good thing for that reason. The other thing I wanted to talk about, and I said there were two things, is a console takes less RAM than a PC does. The operating system is stripped down. It's doing less at the same time. When a console's playing your game, it's only playing your game. When your PC's playing your game, you might have Skype up in the background, and you have an email program, and lots of things cooking that a console won't have going on at the same time. So while it has less RAM, it needs less RAM. That's what I'm getting at. So back on topic. What impact will more RAM have on your gaming experience? What it is it'll be able to load more textures at one time. Have you ever played a big open world games like a Borderlands or a Battlefield 3 or 4 will be coming? And then as you move throughout that world, mountain ranges that you should have been able to see sort of pop in and get rendered into your sight. Buildings and cities that were supposed to be visible, that would be if you were in real life. And then as you navigate through, all of a sudden, like presto, there's a building 3 blocks away that wasn't there before. That's because your system can only hold so many of these textures, so many of these objects in its RAM at the same time. If you increase the RAM in your Xbox One, then you'll be able to have more worlds sort of rendered around you at one time. That's what more RAM will get your gaming experience. The other thing is, if you run low on RAM, like let's say the developer does a bad job of testing, the impact is you're gaming, everything is going fine, everything is cool, and then boom, your frame rate drops super low. And in the PC world, like my experience is PC gamers see this and they say, oh my god, this is dreadful, things totally suck, that's terrible. In the console world, when you see this, it's almost like a reward for doing something great, because usually like when my frame rate drops on a console, what happens is it's like I've just defeated some big boss character. There's explosions and loot and stuff popping everywhere. And when that happens, the console struggles to render that many objects on the screen. The console struggles to get all that done at one time. And I feel like I'm almost rewarded with a lower frame rate during a really complicated scene, and that's usually some sort of glorious like end of battle type thing. But anyway, that's what can happen when you run low on RAM, especially on the graphics card. That rendering and the frame rate drops super low, and you've seen that before. Now, of course, if you're playing a shooter and your frame rate drops super low because you ran low on RAM, then that's like a horrible thing. Nobody likes that. You know, everybody, like, if a lot of people who watch my channel are Call of Duty players or have some Call of Duty experience, if you've experienced it when your frame rate drops low, it's like, no, I need my 60 frames per second of information to play as well as I can play. Frame rate drops there, terrible. Anyway, that's the first half of this video. What more RAM would get you on the Xbox One is bigger worlds, more things, like more textures and sort of objects in your game at one time. That's what more RAM would get you. Now let's talk about what a higher clock rate on your GPU would get you. And for you guys who are tech nerds like me, we're talking about GPUs in the same architecture. I know that clock rate isn't exactly the same as GPU capability, but within the same architecture, it is, right? If I'm running at 1,000 gigahertz, or I'll say 1 gigahertz, and then that same architecture runs it at 1.5, it is 50% faster. That's just the deal. If the architecture changes, it's not. Anyway, back on topic. They're talking about just upping the clock rate. And from Microsoft's point, or almost any chip manufacturer, when they give that chip to you, all the chips are just a tiny little bit different, right? Like it's off by a micron here or there. And if you run less voltage through it and lower the clock rate on it, then they all work. If you start pushing them to their very, very, very maximum, then the yields get lower because the failure rate gets higher. According to this rumor, and it's just rumor, Microsoft seems willing to deal with the lower yield, which would increase their manufacturing costs, to ship higher clock rates in their Xbox Ones, right? Or it could mean we're out for another round of Red Ring of Death, but it's a little early to start talking about hardware reliability on hardware that hasn't even shipped yet. But Microsoft is, according to rumor, interested in shipping it with a higher clock rate on the graphics processing unit. And this second half of the video is what would happen if we made that choice. What would happen if we did that? And the answer is it'd be able to render more things on your screen at once. And what I'm talking about here is like more polygons, more things that are happening. And like as you look at my face, humans are really just like detail oriented with regards to looking at faces. You can have more detail oriented faces because you can do more things at one time. You can render in more detail. You can handle more calculations per second. And that's a little different than just handling more textures at one time. It's more calculations per second. A lot of times when you play games, the things that you're looking at, like if you walk past a building, that wall is just a picture that's floating by you. It's a texture. It's just scrolling by. But if you're doing things in games that are real, like dynamic, right? Like you walk into a windy area and your cape blows behind you, and that needs to react to things that happen in game, and that experience is different every time you play it, then that's rendered in real time. And having a higher clock speed on your GPU would enable it to render more stuff at one time, or render the same things at one time better. If it's a lower clock speed, then that cape might only be able to fold 3 ways at a time, and if it's a higher clock speed, then it can fold 10 or 12 or 15. I'm exaggerating. It'd only be like whatever 20% faster, but it'd be able to do 3 to 4 things at one time. That's what a higher clock speed gets you. Now the question: if I was writing games, right? If Microsoft was asking me which one I wanted, I think I'd pick the clock speed, and this is why. It really has to do with keeping up with the Joneses. The rumor is, because the Xbox hasn't totally released its specs yet on the GPU, which is concerning. The rumor is that the PS4 is 50% faster, which is a lot. And if Microsoft, if the developers are trying to target cross-platform games, I wouldn't want them to not write for the Xbox One because the hardware specs prevented them from doing what they can. A little off topic here. Microsoft says, well, you have the cloud, and there are certain things you can render in the cloud and take advantage of the processing power we have out there. But the challenge with that is no one else is requiring you to do that. You know, when I write a game for your PC, which is, you know, mega powerful compared to consoles, then I'm not asking you to divvy up your programs and put threads out in the cloud and threads here locally and combine those things and have all this, you know, remote graphics processing nonsense. It's complicated to do. So Microsoft is saying, oh yeah, we've got tons of power in the cloud if you just up your development costs by 50% because it's super hard to do. You know, that's not a pure win for the developer. You know, if it was up to them, they just have great hardware to code against and not have to worry about things happening here, things happening there, combining those two and making a great experience. So anyway, if they up the clock rate on the GPU, which is the second half of the rumor, then they'll be able to do more complex renderings in your game to give you better details, more fluid characters, more fluid clothing, more like a more realistic experience, as opposed to more RAM, which would just give you like a bigger experience, more buildings, more things, and there it is. That's the rumor that's out there. They're asking developers to pick between those two things, and that's what I would pick if I was given the choice. Next week we'll be back to our regular style Tech Tuesdays, but I hope you enjoyed the video.